I'll start small. I laughed. An hour later, I was $7,300 in the hole. My name is Lucas. I'm an IT contractor. 4 months ago, I had my own apartment, a clean credit score, and a sister who trusted my word. Today I sleep on her couch next to a toy bin, and my niece drew me into her family because I don't have one of my own anymore. You want to know how fast it happens? I walked into a casino on a Friday night with borrowed rent money and a plan. I told myself I'd double it and walk away. The first hour, I was winning. The cards felt like proof I'd figured something out. Then they turned. I didn't lose it all at once. I lost it in waves, each one pulling me back to the table. My phone kept buzzing. My sister, my landlord, my future calling. I never picked up. By midnight, I'd burned through everything: rent money, credit cards, my last $80 in savings. The dealer never blinked. He just kept dealing. 3 days later, a sheriff changed my locks. So here's the question. When you're sitting at that table, convinced the next hand will fix everything, what goes first? Your money, your home, or the person you promised you'd never become? I met my sister in the Safeway parking lot on Northeast Broadway at 4:47 on a Friday afternoon. I remember the exact time because I'd been watching the clock all day, waiting for her shift at the dental office to end. Jen pulled up in her minivan, white, with a dent in the rear bumper from when she backed into a mailbox last winter. I could see Maya and Tyler in their car seats through the rear window. Maya was 6, Tyler was 4, and they were both eating animal crackers from a box wedged between them. Maya waved when she saw me. I waved back. Jen rolled down her window, but didn't get out. She looked tired. She always looked tired. You sure about this? She asked. I'm sure, I said. I just need to get ahead of it before Monday. She reached into the center console and pulled out a white envelope. The kind you get from the bank. I could see Christmas Fund written on it in her handwriting, the letters cramped and careful. She counted out $800 bills. Crisp ones. She must have gone to the bank on her lunch break. I watched her thumbs move across the edges of the bills, and I felt something twist in my chest. This is for rent, Lucas, she said. Not for anything else. I know. I mean it. I can't do this again. I know. I'll Venmo you a photo of the receipt tomorrow. I promise. She handed me the cash through the window. Her hand was cold when our fingers touched. You're my brother, she said. But I have 2 kids and a mortgage. This is it. I know, I said again. Thank you. Really. Tyler started crying in the back seat. Something about a cracker. Jen glanced in the rearview mirror and sighed. I have to go, she said. Go. I'll text you later. She rolled up the window and backed out of the spot. I stood there holding the envelope and watched her van disappear into traffic. The sun was starting to drop behind the buildings, and the air smelled like exhaust and fried food from the teriyaki place across the street that I got into my Honda and sat there for 10 minutes with the engine off. The check engine light glowed orange on the dash. It had been on for 3 weeks. I couldn't afford to fix it that I opened the envelope and counted the money again. $800. 2 months' rent was $2,300. My landlord had said he'd take $1,500 and let me pay the rest over the next 2 months if I could get it to him by Monday. That would buy me time. Maybe enough time to pick up another freelance gig. Maybe enough time to figure something out. The math was simple. If I could turn $800 into $1,600, I'd have enough to cover the payment and still have a little left over for groceries. If I could turn it into $2,000, I'd be clear until February that I'd been thinking about it for 3 weeks. I'd watched YouTube videos about blackjack strategy. I'd read articles about card counting, about when to hit and when to stand, about managing your bankroll. It wasn't gambling if you had a system. It was math that I told myself that for 10 minutes while I sat in the parking lot. Then I started the car and drove south toward the Riverside Casino that I didn't go home first. I didn't want to give myself time to think about it. I didn't want to walk into my apartment and see the pile of mail on the counter, the eviction notice, the credit card statements I hadn't opened, the utility shut-off warning. I didn't want to look at any of it. The gas light came on halfway there. The little orange glow next to the check engine light. I had maybe a quarter tank left. Enough to get to the casino and back. Enough for one trip. The drive took 22 minutes. I know because I kept checking the clock on my phone. I thought about calling Jen and telling her I'd changed my mind. I thought about turning around and going to the bank and depositing the money and telling my landlord I'd have the rest in 2 weeks. I thought about a lot of things, but I kept driving. The Riverside Casino sat just off I-5, A low brick building with a parking garage that curved around the side like a concrete spiral. I'd driven past it 100 times. I'd been inside twice before, once for a friend's birthday 2 years ago, once by myself last summer when I'd lost $200 in an hour and promised myself I'd never come back. That promise felt very far away now. I parked on the third level of the garage under a flickering, fluorescent light that buzzed like a trapped wasp. I sat there for another 5 minutes with the engine running, my hands on the steering wheel, the envelope of cash sitting on the passenger seat. Maya's face kept flashing in my head. The way she'd waved at me through the window. The animal crackers. Tyler crying about something small and fixable. I picked up the envelope and got out of the car. The air in the garage was cold and smelled like oil and concrete. Somewhere below me, a car alarm went off, then stopped. I locked the Honda and walked toward the elevator, the cash folded in my front pocket, my heart beating in my throat. I told myself I'd just look around first. Maybe grab dinner at the casino restaurant. Maybe have a drink at the bar and watch the tables for a while. I didn't have to play right away. I told myself a lot of things. The elevator doors opened, and I stepped inside. I should have gone home first. I know that now, but I was afraid if I did, I'd lose my nerve. I drove straight from Jen's parking lot to the casino, and I didn't let myself think too hard about what I was doing. But before I headed inside, before I sat down at any table, I realized I was still wearing my work clothes, a wrinkled t-shirt and jeans that smelled like coffee and sweat from sitting at my desk all day. I looked like what I was, a guy who was 2 months behind on rent and running out of options if I was going to do this. I needed to look like I belonged at S.O. I turned the car around and drove back to my apartment. It was a garden-level studio in North Portland, just off Lombard. 1,200 square feet if you counted the bathroom. $11.50 a month, which had seemed reasonable when I signed the lease 2 years ago, back when I had steady contract work and a savings account that wasn't empty. Now it just felt like a trap. I parked in my spot under the carport, the one with the flickering light that maintenance had promised to fix 6 months ago, and unlocked the front door. The air inside smelled like mildew and someone else's cooking. Onions, maybe, or garlic. The smell came through the heating vents from the unit upstairs. I didn't know my neighbors. I'd lived here for 2 years, and I didn't know any of their names. The apartment was dim. I hadn't opened the curtains in days. The kitchen counter was covered with mail I hadn't touched. I could see the corner of the eviction notice sticking out from under a Safeway flyer. 3 days ago, the property manager had taped it to my door. I'd peeled it off and brought it inside and buried it under everything else. There were 2 credit card statements I hadn't opened. A utility bill with final notice printed in red across the envelope. A letter from my mom in Boise that I'd been avoiding for 2 weeks. I didn't look at any of it. I walked past the counter, past the futon that doubled as my couch in my bed, and into the bathroom. The light above the mirror flickered twice before it stayed on. There was a brown water stain spreading across the ceiling in the corner. It had been there when I moved in. It was bigger now. I looked at myself in the mirror. 34 years old. Dark circles under my eyes. Hair that needed a cut. A face that looked older than it should. I turned on the shower and waited for the water to get hot. It took 3 minutes. I stood under the spray and tried not to think about the fact that I was about to gamble my sister's Christmas fund. I tried not to think about Maya waving at me through the car window. I tried not to think about the promise I'd just made. I got out, dried off, and put on my one decent button-down shirt. Navy blue. I'd worn it to a job interview 6 months ago. The interview hadn't gone anywhere, but the shirt still looked clean. I combed my hair. I brushed my teeth. I looked at myself in the mirror again and tried to see someone who had a plan. The guy looking back almost believed it. I left the bathroom and walked back into the kitchen. My debit card was sitting on the counter next to my wallet. I picked it up, looked at it for a second, then put it back down. I told myself it was a gesture of restraint. A rule. I'd only take the cash Jen gave me. If I lost that, I'd leave. I wouldn't use the debit card. I wouldn't pull from my checking account. It felt like discipline. It felt like control. I didn't realize I was lying to myself. I grabbed my wallet, my phone, and my keys. I took one last look at the pile of mail on the counter, the eviction notice, the bills, the letter from my mom, and I walked out the door. I locked it behind me. The parking lot was quiet. The carport light flickered. Somewhere above me, I could hear Kelly's toddler crying. Kelly lived in the unit directly above mine. I'd seen her a few times in the laundry room. We'd never really talked. I got into my Honda, and sat there for a second. The check engine light came on. The gas gauge still hovered near empty. I started the engine and pulled out of the parking lot. The drive to the riverside took 22 minutes. I didn't turn on the radio. I just drove and watched the city slide past my windows, the strip malls, the fast food joints, the apartment complexes that all looked like mine. By the time I pulled into the casino parking garage, the sun had dropped behind the buildings. The sky was the color of rust. I parked on the third level, same spot as before. I turned off the engine and sat there in the silence. My phone buzzed. A text from a client asking if I'd have the database migration done by Monday. I was supposed to have finished it last week. I'd barely started. I didn't answer. I just turned the phone face down on the passenger seat and got out of the car. The elevator doors opened, and I stepped inside. This time, I didn't hesitate. The Riverside Casino wasn't fancy. It wasn't one of those tribal casinos with marble floors and chandeliers and waiters in bow ties. It was just a low brick building off I-5 with a parking garage and a buffet that smelled like fried chicken and disappointment. But when the elevator doors opened and I stepped inside, it felt like somewhere else. The air was different, cooler, thicker. It smelled like carpet cleaner and cigarette smoke and something sweet I couldn't name. Perfume, maybe, or air freshener. The lights were dim, but somehow too bright at the same time. Everything glowed. The slot machines, the neon signs above the bar, the green felt on the blackjack tables. It was 7:15 on a Friday night, and the place was half full. Not packed, but busy enough that I didn't feel out of place. I stood just inside the entrance for a minute and tried to get my bearings. The slot machines were lined up near the front, rows and rows of them, all blinking and ringing and playing little jingles that looped over and over. There was an older woman sitting at one of them, feeding in dollar bills with one hand and holding a plastic cup of coins with the other. She didn't look up. She didn't blink. She just kept hitting the button. Past the slots was the main floor. Craps tables on the left, loud with a bachelor party crowded around them. One guy in a cheap tuxedo t-shirt was yelling every time the dice landed. His friends were laughing. They all had drinks. Poker room on the right, behind frosted glass. I could see people sitting at green tables, stacks of chips in front of them, their faces blank and unreadable. And in the center, the blackjack pit .6 tables. Maybe 7. Each one had a little sign on the edge that said the minimum bet. $10, $15, $25, $50. I'd done my research. I knew blackjack was the best odds in the house if you played it right. Basic strategy. Hit on 16 if the dealer shows a 7 or higher. Stand on 17. Double down on 11. Split aces and eights. Don't split tens. I'd watched the YouTube videos. I'd read the articles. I'd practiced at home with a deck of cards and a notebook, keeping a running count in my head like the videos said. I wasn't going in blind. I had a system. I walked past the craps tables and headed toward the bar. I told myself I'd get a drink first. Scope out the floor. Watch the dealers. Pick the right table. The bartender was a woman in her 40s with short hair and a name tag that said Brenda. She smiled when I sat down. What can I get you? Jack and Coke. You got it. She made the drink fast, sliding it across the bar in a plastic cup with a little black straw. I reached for my wallet, but she waved me off. Free for players, she said. I nodded and took a sip. The Jack burned going down, and the Coke was flat, but I didn't care. I sat there for 10 minutes and watched the floor. A couple at the roulette table lost $300 in 12 minutes. I watched the chips disappear, stack by stack, and the guy kept smiling like it didn't matter. The woman next to him wasn't smiling. She was staring at the wheel like it owed her something. A group of guys in their 20s were playing blackjack at one of the higher limit tables. $50 minimum. They were drunk and loud, doubling down on bad hands, splitting when they shouldn't. They were losing, but they didn't seem to care. They kept ordering drinks and slapping the table and laughing. I felt superior watching them. I felt smart. I finished my drink and stood up. The blackjack pit was busier now. Most of the tables had at least 2 or 3 people sitting at them. I walked the perimeter, checking the minimums, watching the dealers, and then I saw him. Table 4. $25 minimum. 1 dealer, 2 players. The dealer was a white guy, maybe mid-50s, with reading glasses on a chain around his neck. He had the look of someone who'd been doing this job for a very long time. No expression, no small talk, just cards, chips, and quiet efficiency. The 2 players at his table were older, regulars, probably. They played fast, barely looking at their cards. tossing chips into the betting circle like they were on autopilot. I liked the vibe. Quiet. Professional. No drama. I walked over and sat down. The dealer didn't look up. He just finished the hand he was dealing, collected the losing bets, paid out the winner, and then turned to me. How much? I pulled $200 bills from my wallet and slid them across the felt. He counted them out in front of me, smooth, practiced, and traded them for a stack of green chips. 25 each. Good luck, he said. Flat. Polite. Like he'd said it 10,000 times. Before I stacked the chips in front of me and took a breath. The sign on the edge of the table said his name was Ron. Ron dealt the cards. And just like that, I was in. The first hour went exactly how I'd imagined it. I played tight. Basic strategy, just like the videos said. I didn't get fancy. I didn't chase. I just watched the cards and made the right moves. Ron dealt with the rhythm of a metronome. Slide, flip, slide, flip. No commentary. No eye contact. Just the cards and the chips and the quiet shuffle of the shoe. The two regulars at the table rotated out after 20 minutes. A young couple sat down. Date night, probably. But they lost interest after 3 hands and wandered off toward the slots. That left me alone at the table with Ron. I liked it that way. Fewer variables. Cleaner math. By 8:30. I was up $340. I could feel it in my chest. That spark of validation. I'd been right. The system worked. I wasn't gambling. I was executing a plan. A cocktail waitress came by with another Jack and Coke. I hadn't ordered it, but I took it anyway. Free drinks. One of the perks. I tipped Ron $25 after I hit a blackjack. He nodded. No smile. Just a nod. He slid the tip into the slot on the table and kept dealing. I checked my phone. 8:43 p.m. I'd been here an hour and a half, and I was up $380 now. I did the math in my head. If I could get to $1,500, I'd walk. That was the rule. $1,500 was enough to cover rent and buy groceries for 2 weeks. $1,500 was the goal. I texted Jen from the table. Dinner ran late. Paying rent tomorrow morning. She didn't reply right away. That was fine. She was probably putting the kids to bed. I felt good. In control. Like I'd figured something out that other people missed. The pit boss walked past. Younger guy, late 20s maybe, with gelled hair and a suit that looked a size too small. He glanced at my stack of chips, but didn't stop. Just kept walking. I played another 5 hands. Won 3. Lost 2. By 9 p.m. I was up $420. I set my drink down and leaned back in my chair. This was working. Then I lost the next hand. Then the one after that. Then 3 more in AROW. By 9:15. I was down to 950 total. Still up 150 from where I started. Still fine. Just variance. That's what the articles called it. Variance. I ordered another drink and told myself the cards would turn back. Ron kept dealing. The cards didn't turn back. I lost 3 more hands. 1-1. Lost 5 straight after that. By 9:40. I was down to $680. I wasn't up anymore. I was down. I'd lost 120 of Jen's money. A new player sat down to my left. An older woman with a visor and a system. She arranged her chips in little colored stacks, red on the left, green in the middle, black on the right. Like the pattern mattered. She won the first 2 hands. I lost both. I bumped my bet to $50. Then 75. I needed to catch up faster. Ron dealt with the same rhythm. No reaction. No change. Just cards. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I pulled it out and glanced at the screen. A client. The database migration. Hey man, just checking in. Still good for Monday? I silenced the phone and put it face down on the rail next to my drink. The pit boss circled back. He stopped behind Ron and watched 2 hands. He had a tablet in his hand. He tapped something on the screen, then moved on. I wondered what he'd written. Probably nothing. Probably just routine. The woman with the visor won again. I lost. I was down to $500 now. I finished my drink and motioned for another. The waitress brought it fast. I didn't taste it. I just needed something to do with my hands between deals. Ron shuffled the cards and started a new shoe. I told myself this was when it would turn. New shoe, new luck. I bet $100 on the next hand. Ron dealt me a 12. He showed a queen. I hit. Got a 9. Busted. He collected my chips without a word. By 10 p.m. I'd burned through $200 in 20 minutes. I had 480 left. I was down 320 from where I started. The woman with the visor stood up, gathered her chips, and walked away. She'd won maybe $100. She looked satisfied that I sat there alone with our my chest felt tight. My hands were shaking a little. I told myself it was the caffeine from the Coke. Ron dealt the next hand that I lost. Then I lost again. At T10:15, I stood up and told Ron I was taking a break. He nodded. Still no expression. I walked toward the bathrooms, past the slots, past the roulette table, past the couple who'd been there when I arrived. They were gone now. New people had taken their place. I didn't need the bathroom. I needed the ATM. The ATM was tucked in an alcove near the restrooms, next to a sad-looking courtesy phone and a corkboard covered in flyers for gamblers' anonymous meetings. I stood there for a minute, staring at the screen. My checking account had $247.16 in it. That was it. That was everything. My credit card was maxed. I'd hit the limit 3 weeks ago buying groceries and gas, but I had one option left: a cash advance. I knew what it meant. $15 fee up front. Then 29.99% interest starting immediately. Not after a grace period. Not after the statement closed. Immediately. I knew all of that. I also knew I was down $320. And if I walked out now, I'd have to tell Jen I'd lost her Christmas money. I'd have to tell her I'd lied. I'd have to look her in the eye and explain why I couldn't pay rent on Monday. I pressed the button for a cash advance. The machine asked how much. Maximum $400. I pressed $400. The machine hummed and clicked. A long receipt printed out, covered in warnings and fees in tiny print. I didn't read it. I just folded it into my wallet. 4 crisp $100 bills slid out of the slot. My checking balance was now zero. I stood there holding the money, and I thought about leaving. Just walking out to my car, driving home, going to sleep, and dealing with everything tomorrow. The thought lasted maybe 8 seconds. I walked back to the blackjack pit. Ron was dealing. To an empty table when I sat down. "Welcome back," he said. It was the first personal thing he'd said to me all night. I slid the 400s across the felt. "All hundreds?" he asked. "Yeah." He counted them out, traded them for chips, and started dealing. I played faster now. Bigger bets. 50 per hand. Then 100. I wasn't thinking about basic strategy anymore. I was thinking about getting even. I doubled down on an 11 against Ron's 6. Won $200. Felt the universe tilt back in my direction. Then I lost the next 4 hands. The couple from Seattle sat down. Mid-30s, drunk, holding hands between deals. They played terribly. Hit on 17. Split 10s. Laughed when they lost. And they kept winning. It didn't make sense. They were doing everything wrong. And the cards kept falling their way. I found it personally offensive. Ron kept dealing. Same rhythm. Same blank expression. He didn't care who won or lost. He just dealt. By 10:45, I was down $1,800 total. I'd burned through Jen's 800. I'd burned through my checking account. I'd burned through half the cash advance. My phone buzzed again. I turned it face down on the rail without looking. The pit boss stopped behind Ron. "Watch 5 hands." Made another note on his tablet. This time he looked at me when he walked away. I finished my drink and ordered another. The couple from Seattle won 3 hands in a row, then cashed out. They were up maybe $200. They kissed and walked toward the exit, laughing about something I couldn't hear. I was alone with Ron again. I bet 150 on the next hand. Ron dealt me a 20. He showed a face card, flipped his whole card. 21 push. No winner. I bet 150 again. Lost at 8T1047. I pulled out my credit card to get another cash advance. Ron ran it through the machine. It declined. "Sorry," Ron said quietly. Almost apologetic. I nodded and stood up. I went back to the ATM. This time I had my debit card. The one I'd deliberately left at home. Except I hadn't. It had been in my wallet the whole time. I'd lied to myself about that. 2. My checking was at 0. But I had a savings account. I'd forgotten about it. $83.22. I withdrew $80, leaving $322 behind. The ATM charged me a $250 fee. That would overdraft the account. I'd get hit with another $35 fee tomorrow. I didn't care. I stood there holding 420s, and I knew this was it. This was the last source. There was nothing left after this. I thought about walking to the cage and asking about a marker. A line of credit. I'd heard people talk about them. I walked over. The cage was behind a glass window, staffed by a black woman in her 40s. Her name tag said Denise. "Can I help you?" she asked. I wanted to ask about markers. She smiled. Professional. Kind. You need to apply in advance. Credit check, bank statements, proof of income. It usually takes a few days. Oh, okay. Sorry I can't help tonight. No, that's fine. Thanks. I walked away. I had $80 in cash and 140 yen. Chips still sitting on Ron's table. 220 total. That was it. I walked back to the blackjack pit. Ron was dealing to an empty table. I sat down. He didn't say anything this time. Just waited for me to make my bet. I bet everything. $220 across 6 hands. 1-1. Lost 5. By 11:35. I was at 0. Completely tapped and no cash. No credit. No checking. No savings. I sat there staring at the empty felt in front of me. Ron didn't rush me. He just stood there with his hands folded, waiting. The pit boss appeared again. Can I get you anything? He asked. It was code. I knew what it meant. Time to go. I stood up. My legs felt unsteady. Thanks, I said to Ron. He nodded. I walked toward the bathrooms, past the slots, past the tables, past all of it. I in the bathroom. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. I looked at myself in the mirror, same button-down shirt. Wrinkled now. Eyes red. Face pale. A man who'd walked in here 4 hours ago with $800 and a plan. I pulled out my phone. 17 missed calls. 9 texts. 1 voicemail from my landlord. I didn't listen to it. I opened my banking app checking. $47.16 savings. $3.22 credit card 1. $4, 731 credit card 2. $2, 847. I did the math. 800 cash. 400 advance. 247 checking. 80 savings. Fees, overdrafts, interest, roughly $7,300. That's what I'd lost. I in 4 hours. I put my phone in my pocket and walked out of the bathroom. The casino sounded different now. Louder, sharper, predatory. I walked toward the exit. I sat in my Honda on the 3rd level of the parking garage. Engine off. Check engine light glowing. It was 11:42 p.m. Behind me, the casino was still bright. People were still walking in. A group of women in heels, laughing. A guy in a Blazers jersey. A couple holding hands. They all looked hopeful. I'd looked like that 4 hours ago. I tried to think. Tried to plan. If I called Jen right now and told her I got mugged, maybe she'd help. If I told my landlord the bank delayed the wire transfer, I'd buy 2 more days. If I picked up freelance gigs this weekend, I could make $500 by Tuesday. Every scenario fell apart the second I examined it. I opened my banking app again. The overdraft charges were already posting. $35 here. 15 there. They multiplied while I watched. I listened to my landlord's voicemail. His voice was polite, firm, professional. Lucas, this is David. Just following up on our conversation. I need the full payment, $2,300 for 2 months plus late fees, by Monday at 5 p.m., or we'll have to proceed with eviction. Give me a call when you get this. I deleted the message. I thought about going back inside, finding Denise at the cage, inventing a credit history, begging for a marker. Instead, I started the car. The gas gauge sat just above empty. I drove home. It took 28 minutes. I stopped counting the missed calls after 23. When I pulled into my parking spot under the flickering light, I turned off the engine and sat there. I didn't go inside. I just sat there in the dark, watching the building. And I waited for the sun to come up. I never went inside. I sat in my Honda all night, engine off, watching the parking lot. The flickering light above me buzzed and clicked, on and off, like it was trying to send me a message in Morse code. Around 6 in the morning, people started leaving for work. The nurse from upstairs walked out in scrubs, her keys jingling. The guy from the end unit backed his bakery van out of his spot. An older couple I'd seen a few times walked their dog past my car. The dog stopped to sniff my front tire. Normal people. Normal problems. Jobs to go to. Lives that made sense. My phone was at 8% battery. I finally made myself listen to the voicemails. Jen first. Her voice was worried. Lucas, hey, just checking in. Call me when you get this, okay? I want to make sure everything's good. Then my landlord. I'd already heard that one. A client. Hey man, it's Kyle. Just wanted to touch base about the project. Let me know if you're still on track for Monday. Thanks. 2 creditors. Robotic voices. This is an important message regarding your account. Please call us back at. And 1 from my mom in Boise. I didn't listen to that one. I just deleted it. The sun was up now. Saturday stretched ahead of me like an empty highway. No destination. No map. I needed to tell Jen the truth. I needed to finish Kyle's project so I could get paid $1,200 on Tuesday. I needed to sleep. I needed to eat. I needed to think that I couldn't do any of it, that my brain was a hamster wheel. The same calculations spinning over and over, never resolving. If I could just get $1,500 by Monday. If I could just explain to my landlord. If I could just go back in time 4 hours and walk out of that casino when I was up $340 diff. If at 7:15, I finally got out of the CAR.my legs were stiff. My back ached. I smelled like casino air and sweat and failure. I unlocked my apartment door and stepped inside. The air was stale. The mail was still piled on the counter. The eviction notice was still buried under the Safeway flyer. But there was something new. A piece of notebook paper, folded in half, on the floor by the door. Someone had slipped it under while I was gone. I picked it up and unfolded it. Hey, Lucas, can I borrow $40 for groceries until Monday? I'll pay you back, promise. Kelly, upstairs. I stood there holding the note. Kelly, the single mom with the toddler I heard crying through the ceiling. The woman I'd seen maybe 5 times in 2 years. She was asking me for $40. The irony was so absurd I almost laughed. Almost. I set the note on the counter next to the eviction notice and sat down on my futon.my laptop. Was on the floor where I'd left it Thursday night. I opened it and pulled up Kyle's project, a database migration for a small law firm. 8 hours of work, maybe 10 if I did it right. $1,200 on completion. I stared at the code. The screen blurred. I tried to focus. Tried to think. But my brain felt like static. I checked my bank account again, even though I knew what it would say. Checking. $47.16 savings. $3.22 Visa. $4, 731 MasterCard. $2, 847 back rent. $2, 300. I added it up in my head. Roughly $19,000 in debt. $19,000. My phone buzzed. Jen calling. I stared at her name on the screen. I let it go to voicemail. Her voice came through the speaker. Lucas, I'm really worried. Please just call me back and let me know you're okay. I don't care what time it is. Just call me. I closed my laptop. I lay down on the futon, still wearing yesterday's wrinkled button-down, and stared at the ceiling. The water stain in the corner had grown. Or maybe I'd just never looked at it this closely before. I closed my eyes. I didn't sleep. At 2:30 p.m. Someone knocked. 3 sharp raps. Official sounding. I sat up on the futon, my heart hammering. For a second, I thought maybe it was the sheriff. Maybe they'd come early. Maybe the eviction was happening today instead of Monday. But when I opened the door, it was Terry. Terry was my landlord's property manager. Mid-40s, balding, always wearing a polo shirt with the property management company logo on it. I'd met him maybe twice. Once when I signed the lease. Once 6 months ago when my kitchen sink backed up. Hey, Lucas, he said. He looked uncomfortable. Hey, I'm sorry to bother you on a Saturday. David asked me to drop this off personally. He held out a manila envelope. I took it. It's the 72-hour notice to vacate, Terry said. Official one. You've got until Monday at 5 p.m. to pay the full amount, $2,300, or the eviction moves forward. There'll be a court date, and if you don't show up, or if the judge rules in our favor, the sheriff will supervise a lockout. I nodded. My mouth was dry. Do you have any questions? Terry asked. No, I got it. There are resources, he said. Emergency housing assistance. I can give you some numbers if you want. I'm good. I'll have it by Monday. It was a reflex. The lie came out automatically. Terry nodded. He didn't believe me. I could see it in his face. You're a good tenant otherwise, he said. Never had any complaints. I hope you can work it out. Thanks. He turned and walked back to his car. I closed the door and opened the envelope. The notice was 3 pages long. Legal language about unlawful detainer and court procedures and sheriff lockouts. My name was misspelled. Davenport instead of Davenport. A small indignity on top of a catastrophe. I set the notice on the counter next to Kelly's note and went to take a shower. The water was cold at first, then scalding. I stood under it until my skin turned red. When I got out, I put on clean clothes, sweatpants and a t-shirt. I sat down at my laptop and opened Kyle's project. This time, I made myself focus. I worked for 8 hours straight. No breaks, no food. Just code and coffee and the sound of Kelly's toddler crying upstairs, by 11 p.m. I was done. I submitted the project through the client portal and sent Kyle an email. Finished. Let me know if you need any revisions. That he replied 10 minutes later. Perfect timing, man. Thanks. Payment will process Tuesday. $1,200. IT wasn't enough. Not even close. But it was something that I closed my laptop and lay back down on the futon. My phone sat on the floor next to me. Screen dark. That I knew I needed to call Jen. That I knew I needed to tell her the truth. That I picked up the phone. That I didn't call. Not yet. Sunday morning. I finally called Jen. It was 11:23 a.m. I'd been sitting on the futon for 20 minutes, staring at her name in my contacts, trying to find the words. She answered on the first ring. Lucas. Jesus. Are you okay? Yeah, I'm okay. I've been calling you since yesterday. What happened? I took a breath. I need to tell you something. Silence on the other end. Then I heard Maya in the background, singing something from a cartoon. Okay, Jen said. Her voice was careful now, guarded. I didn't pay rent. What? I didn't pay rent. The money you gave me. I lost it. More silence. Lost it how? I went to the casino. I heard her exhale, long and slow. Lucas. I know. You promised me. I know. You looked me in the eye and you promised me. I know. I'm sorry. She didn't say anything for a long time. I could hear her breathing. I could hear Tyler asking for juice in the background. How much did you lose? She finally asked. All of it. And more. About $7,300 total. $7,300. Yeah. Jesus Christ, Lucas. I know. Do you have a gambling problem? The question hung in the air. I don't know, I said. Maybe. Probably. Has this happened before? Smaller stuff. Yeah. I've been ignoring it. Another long silence. I can't lend you money again, she said. I can't. I have 2 kids and a mortgage and I'm barely keeping it together as it is. I know. I'm not asking. But I can offer you the couch. For a month. While you figure things out. I closed my eyes. Jen, 1 month, Lucas. That's it. And you need to talk to someone. A counselor. GA meetings. Something. Okay. I mean it. I will. I promise. She laughed. It wasn't a happy sound. Your promises don't mean much right now. I know. We sat there in silence for a minute. When's the eviction? She asked. Monday at 5. Sheriff comes Wednesday morning to change the locks. Okay. Move in Wednesday afternoon. I'll have the couch ready. Thank you. Don't thank me. Just get help. I will. We hung up. I sat there holding my phone, staring at the wall. After a while, I opened a browser and typed Gamblers Anonymous Portland. A dozen results popped up. Meetings every day of the week. Churches, community centers, hospital basements. That I didn't click any of them. Not yet. Monday at 4:47 p.m., I was sitting on my futon surrounded by boxes that I didn't have the rent. Kyle's payment wouldn't clear until Tuesday, and even then it was only half of what I needed. That I'd spent the day packing. Clothes in trash bags. Kitchen stuff in a cardboard box I'd pulled from the recycling bin. Books, laptop, charger, the few things that mattered. Most of the furniture had come with the place. The futon, the kitchen table, the dresser with the broken drawer. That I wasn't taking any of it. I found things I'd forgotten. A birthday card from my mom with a $20 bill inside. A photo of me and Jen at our dad's funeral 3 years ago, both of us in black, both of us crying. A poker chip from Vegas. I'd kept as a lucky charm. I threw the chip in the trash at 4:47, the exact time I'd met Jen in the Safeway parking lot 72 hours ago. I sat down on the futon and waited. No miracle came. 5 o'clock passed at 5:17. My phone buzzed out a text from Terry. Sorry, Lucas, eviction stance. Sheriff will supervise lockout Wednesday 9 a.m. You'll have until 10 to remove remaining belongings. I texted back. Understood. That was a. I spent one last night in the apartment. I lay on the futon, still dressed, surrounded by boxes, listening to Kelly's toddler cry upstairs, around midnight. The crying stopped. The building was silent. I stared at the ceiling until the sun came up. The sheriff arrived at 8:57 a.m. 3 minutes early. I was already outside, standing next to my Honda, waiting. The deputy was younger than I expected. Maybe 30. Crew cut, pressed uniform, professional demeanor. Lucas Davenport. He asked. Yeah, I'm here to supervise the lockout. You've got until 10 a.m. to remove any remaining belongings. After that, the property manager will change the locks and you won't have access anymore. Understood. Understood. Terry pulled up a minute later in his company truck. He had a clipboard and a new deadbolt still in the package. Hey Lucas, he said. He looked tired. Let's get this done. I nodded. I'd already loaded most of my stuff into the car the night before. 3 trips. Everything I owned crammed into a 10-year-old Honda with a check engine light. Now I just had the last few things. A lamp. A box of kitchen stuff. My pillow. I carried them out one by one while the sheriff watched. Kelly was at her window upstairs. I could see her face behind the glass, her toddler in her arms. She didn't wave. She just watched. A neighbor I'd never spoken to, guy from the end unit, stopped on his way to his car. You moving out? He asked. Yeah. Everything okay? Yeah. Just moving. He nodded and kept walking. By 9:47, my car was full. I couldn't fit anything else. Terry handed me a piece of paper. Final accounting, he said. $2,300 in back rent, plus $175 in court fees. It's been sent to collections. You'll start getting letters in a few weeks. I signed the paper. Terry took out the new deadbolt and a drill. The sheriff stood next to him, hands on his belt, watching me. 9:58. Terry finished installing the lock. He tested it. Locked, unlocked, locked again. That's it, he said. You're all set. I looked at the door. My door. For 2 years. Not anymore. I got in my Honda and started the engine. The gas gauge sat just above empty. I drove east toward Gresham, toward Jen's house, toward something that wasn't quite rock bottom, but close. Jen's house was a 2-bedroom ranch in Gresham. She bought it after her divorce 3 years ago. Small yard, 1-car garage, beige siding that needed paint. My couch was in the living room, next to Maya's toy bin. The first night, I folded my blanket at 6 a.m. when Jen got the kids up for school. I hid my bedding in the hall closet. I tried to make myself invisible. Jen didn't say much. She made breakfast for the kids, toaster waffles and orange juice, and told Maya to grab her backpack. You want coffee? She asked me. Yeah, thanks. She poured me a cup and set it on the kitchen table. Tyler stared at me from his booster seat. Why is Uncle Lucas here? He asked. He's staying with us for a little while, Jen said. What? Because he needed a place to stay. Oh, we didn't talk about it after that. Days collapsed into routine. I woke up at 6 when the kids did. I folded my blanket. I applied for jobs from Jen's kitchen table, contract gigs, full-time positions, anything that would hire me. My credit was destroyed. That eliminated most apartment options. Even with a roommate, most landlords wanted a credit check. On Thursday night, I went to a GA meeting. It was in a church basement in East Portland. Fluorescent lights, folding chairs, a coffee pot that looked like it was from 1987. There were maybe 15 people there. All ages, all backgrounds. I sat in the back and didn't say anything. A guy named Marcus shared first. He'd lost his house, his wife, and custody of his kids. He'd been sober from gambling for 2 years. A woman named Linda talked about stealing from her employer to cover losses. She'd done jail time. Another guy, younger, maybe 25, talked about online poker. He'd lost $40,000 in 6 months. Their stories were worse than mine, and exactly like mine. I went back the next Thursday, and the Thursday after that. On the 3rd week, I shared. I told them my name. I told them about Jen's $800. I told them about the $7,300. I told them about the couch. They nodded. They listened. N01 judged. After the meeting, Marcus gave me his phone number. Call me if you need to talk, he said. Anytime. I put his number in my phone. I started picking up small freelance projects. For 100 here, 300 there. I sent half of everything I made to Jen for groceries. She never asked for it, but I gave it anyway. Some nights, I played with Maya and Tyler. I helped with homework. I read bedtime stories. Maya drew me pictures. Tyler asked me to build Lego towers. It was nice, and it was unbearable that I thought about Ron sometimes. The dealer, the guy who'd watched me lose everything without blinking. I wondered if he remembered me. I never drove past the Riverside Casino. I took side streets to avoid it. 3 weeks in, Jen asked me a question. Are you serious about recovery? She said. Or are you just waiting this out? I didn't know how to answer. It was late January. For months since that Friday night, it was raining. It always rained in Portland in January. I was still on Jen's couch, but I had a plan now. I'd saved $1,800. Not much, but enough for first and last month's rent on a roommate situation I'd found on Craigslist. Northeast Portland, $600 a month. Move-in date March 1 SD. I'd landed a 6-month contract starting in 2 weeks. Steady income. Benefits. 40 hours a week that I'd been going to GA meetings every Thursday. Sometimes Tuesdays too that I'd shared my story 3 times now. Each time got a little easier that I hadn't been inside a casino since that night. Not once that I still owed roughly $18,000. Credit cards, back rent, collections. But I'd set up payment plans. 50 here, 75 there. $5 at a time. My credit score was 510. I wasn't fixed. But I wasn't actively falling anymore. On a Thursday after a meeting, I drove home a different route. Not avoiding the casino, just passing through. I drove past the riverside. The parking garage was full. People walking in under umbrellas, faces hopeful, convinced tonight would be different. I thought about Ron, dealing to a new version of me. Someone walking in with borrowed money and a system. I kept driving. At Jen's house. Maya had taped a picture to the fridge. A house. 3 stick figures, labels and crayon. Mama, Maya, Tyler, and Uncle Lucas. I stood there looking at it for a long time. Later, I sat on the couch with my laptop. I opened a spreadsheet. Income, debts, payment schedules, timelines. The math of digging out. It was a long road. Years, probably, but for the first time in months. I could see the other my phone glowed in the dark room. On the kitchen counter. There was a coffee mug. Empty, rinsed, waiting. For morning. I closed my laptop. I folded my blanket. I lay down on the couch, and I slept. I woke up at 6:15 to the sound of Tyler singing in the hallway. Some song from a TV show I didn't recognize. He was making up half the words. I folded my blanket, put it in the closet, and walked into the kitchen. Jen was making coffee. She looked up when I came in. Morning, she said. Morning. She poured me a cup without asking. Set it on the table. Maya wandered in, dragging her backpack. She climbed into her chair and smiled at me. Uncle Lucas, will you still be here when I get home from school? Yeah, I'll be here. Good. I want to show you my spelling test. I got 100. That's awesome. I can't wait to see it. Tyler ran into the kitchen and crashed into my legs. Uncle Lucas, build Legos with me. After school, buddy. You've got to get ready. Jen handed the kids their breakfast. Toaster waffles. The same as every morning that we sat there in the kitchen, the 4 of us, eating breakfast in the quiet hum of a normal day. Outside, the rain had stopped. The sky was gray, but lighter. Almost bright. I sipped my coffee and thought about the spreadsheet on my laptop. The payment plans. The timeline. 0.5 years, maybe. If I stayed disciplined. If I didn't slip. 0.5 years to dig out of a hole I'd made in 4 hours. It seemed impossible. And maybe it was. But I was going to try anyway. After breakfast, Jen loaded the kids into her van. I stood at the door and waved as they backed out of the driveway. Maya waved back. Tyler pressed his face against the window. When they were gone, I closed the door and walked back to the couch. I picked up my phone. Opened my contacts. Marcus. The guy from GA who'd given me his number that I hadn't called him yet. Not once, but I saved his number. Just in case. I set the phone down and looked around the living room, the couch, the toy bin. Maya's drawing on the fridge. It wasn't my home, but it was something. I sat down and opened my laptop. I had work to do. And for the first time in a long time, I felt ready to do it.